Sarada's Mangekyo might be one of the most overpowered sharingans in the entire franchise. The power to negate matter itself in the form of a black hole, or at least that's what it seems to be. Now this does beg the question of why she awakened such an ability. What is the reasoning behind it? Well, this all goes back to the mechanic by which Mangekyo abilities are developed, which is tied to the life experience of the user. We first saw this in Itachi's case when one of his Mangekyo abilities manifested as Amaterasu. He can then draw a comparison to the Will of Fire, which here is then described as the will to protect the Leaf Village. So then Itachi, who went to the extent of sacrificing his entire clan for the sake of said village, that then awakened an ever-burning flame in the form of Amaterasu. Sasuke, or Susuke, on the other hand, also possessed the Amaterasu due to the burning anger he carried with him his entire life until Itachi's death, only to discover that his anger was misplaced all along. So the ability of Sasuke's other Mangekyo came in the form of Infernal Flame Control, which allowed him to control his flames, thus being able to direct it at those he deemed responsible, such as the village he once vowed to destroy. Now Shin Uchiha was experimented on and was created to be a weapon. That was his entire existence. He then viewed shinobi themselves as just weapons that exist to be manipulated, even his own clones. So his Mangekyo ability allowed him to manipulate weapons, which is as direct as one can be. Now you also have Shishui Uchiha, who everyone thought was Shin Uchiha for some reason, but that's besides the point. Now his Mangekyo ability manifested in the form of Koto Matsukami, which is pretty much an overpowered genjutsu ability that allows the user to enter the mind of others and manipulate them. It's also undetectable, which made it useful against the Uchiha that Shishui planned on subduing using the ability. You see, just like Itachi, Shishui planned on stopping the coup planned by the Uchiha using Koto Matsukami, because it was in the best interest of the village that it didn't occur. So one can assume that he likely had that goal before manifesting the ability and tried to persuade them, but to no avail. So his Mangekyo then manifested as Koto Matsukami, which allowed him to do just that. Now the same also applies to Obito and Kakashi. You see, the Kamui ability manifested in multiple ways. First, by allowing Obito to escape danger by transporting aspects of his body to another dimension. Or to simplify it, the ability allows him to phase through anything. Now, this likely manifested due to his desire to survive when the rocks came tumbling down in that cave, which again goes back to Madara saying that it was as if Obito phased right through them. The second ability allowed him to teleport between locations using Kamui Dimension as a conduit, so it's pretty much a transportation jutsu. Now this likely manifested due to Obito always being late because he kept stopping to help the elderly as shown in his backstory. So an ability to move from location to location in seconds because he had trouble being on time. Crazy, right? But yeah, Kakashi on the other hand awakened the long distance version of Kamui, which allowed him to teleport anything in his line of sight to the Kamui dimension. Now this was likely because Kakashi watched everyone he cared about disappear, his father, Obito, Rin, and his sensei, the 4th Hokage, all of which he blamed himself for. So as you can see guys, the logic tracks for everyone, so I don't see why it wouldn't apply for Sarada. The real question is, what does Sarada desire? What fundamental life experience or challenge would manifest Sarada's Mangekyo ability? But I think it all goes back to Sasuke, or at least her relationship with him. You see, even though they technically resolved the storyline about her relationship with Sasuke and him not being around, more so in the anime at least, there have been some hints towards this still being an issue for Sarada to some extent. And before you guys, start saying I'm crazy, hear me out, okay? This happened in around chapter 68 after Boruto was revived by Momoshiki and he was having a conversation with Sasuke on the balcony. Sarada seemed very annoyed by this and went on to say that Sasuke has forgotten that he's her father first, even more than Boruto's teacher. This goes back to Sarada's initial complaints earlier on in the story, where she was somewhat annoyed, by Sasuke not spending enough time with her and instead choosing to train Boruto or go on missions. This was somewhat later rectified by Sasuke, mainly in the anime where he trained her for a good bit and even went to Father-Daughter Day. But just a couple arcs later, we still see that this sentiment still somewhat lingers. Now I'm not saying that she's being malicious or that she hates Boruto, but more so that she wants to spend more time with her dad like any child would, and make up for the decade they lost before. That is why I thought her Mangekyo ability will be time manipulation, which stems from her wanting to make up for lost time. This could be somewhat similar to Madara's filler Mangekyo ability, which allowed him to record and rewind time a few seconds, of course with his knowledge of the future intact, thus being able to make different decisions if he didn't like the outcome. Yet based on the recent chapter, Sarada's Mangekyo ability manifested as a black hole instead, which could indeed signify the void left by Sasuke being an absent father for most of her life. So the logic does track in a sense, but there is something even better. As pointed out by Reddit user Spark Engine, Sarada ties the three together, referring to, Team 7, in a way that wasn't clear before. It also emphasizes how Kawaki is the alien element to their lives and dynamic, a part of Team 7 that doesn't share that cohesion. The Earth or the planet needs the sun to not grow cold and lifeless. The moon also needs the Earth to not drift away into the vacuum of nothing. It also needs the sun to shine since, it doesn't produce its own light, which also leads into the entire Mitsuki stuff. Now the sun needs planets and moons in its orbit, otherwise it's not a sun, it's just a star burning alone forever in space with nothing to do and no one to illuminate. So in essence, they all need each other to function as Earth, Moon, and Sun. If anything, Kawaki has come to symbolize the empty space around them that keeps them separated in different ways. Now that last part plays beautifully into the entire dynamic with Kawaki, but let's bring it back to Sarada. So Sarada's Mangekyo takes the form of a sun, so the most obvious choice would be something related to fire or, some time-based ability, which I also pointed out. When you factor in Sarada's life experience, it does point to something else. As I pointed out before, Kakashi awakened a long-distance version of Kamui, which allowed him to teleport anything in his line of sight to the Kamui dimension. This was likely because Kakashi watched everyone in his life disappear, such as his father, Obito, Rin, and his sensei, the 4th Hokage, which he blamed himself for. So his Mangekyo manifested the ability for him to make things disappear for that reason. The same thing also happened to Sarada. She lost her dad, the Hokage she admired, and even Boruto himself that was framed for killing that Hokage. She must have felt a great sense of loss, watching the people she loved disappear one by one. This then manifested in the ability to make things disappear, similar to the long-range Kamui ability Kakashi awakened. This also falls in line with her Mangekyo taking the form of a sun, since a dying sun collapses into a black hole. So contrary to popular belief, Sarada didn't awaken her Mangekyo because of love, she awakened it due to a great sense of loss. Now there is another interpretation of this as pointed out by Piamonte91. They go on to say that Sarada's eyes depict a sun. Suns are massive stars, and these stars have a huge gravitational pull that attract other celestial bodies and make them spin around them, just like our sun does with this planet and the other planets in this solar system. So Sarada's MS ability reflects this. She chooses a point in any location, and that location acts as a gravitational pull, attracting and redirecting any ability towards it. It also symbolizes the idea that Boruto is Sarada's gravitational center, and everything she does spins around him, for better or for worse. So as you can see, there are multiple reasons why Sarada could have awakened this ability, but I stand on the firm belief that her life experience is a very important factor. Now there's also the issue of whether she was aware of this awakening. You see, there is precedence for reawakenings happening in the Naruto universe in multiple instances, which I've covered in this video on screen, but it's relevant here, so let's do it again. The first one we're gonna cover is the mystery behind when Obito awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan. Now this one is particularly interesting because it was shown to us on panel in chapter 605 that Obito awakened his Mangekyo upon seeing Rin die, which makes sense since the Mangekyo is mostly awakened due to emotional distress. So for the most part, it seems pretty clear and cut, this was indeed the moment when the eye was awakened, but that's when Madara comes in. You see, after Obito gave his left eye to Kakashi and the rest of the structure caved in, he didn't actually die. I mean, clearly since, we read the story, but the point is that Madara was the one who saved him. He then brought him back to his hideout where he patched him up with Hashirama cells, thus restoring his lost limbs and organs. So when Obito eventually woke up, half his body was in bandages while the other half was mostly fine. Now, this is all relevant because Madara then goes on to say that Obito surviving could be called a miracle. It is incredible that he wasn't completely crushed by those boulders. It's almost as if he passed right through them. He then went on to point out that only half of his body was mostly pulverized, which of course was referring to the right side of his body that the rock initially fell on. Now as you guys know, Obito's Mangekyo ability is known as Kami, which I deduced before, which has the function that allows him to phase through objects by projecting portions of his body to the Kami dimension. So yeah, the logic behind it is pretty wonky, but he's pretty much existing in two spaces at the same time, which allows him to decide which space has his physical body at any given time. That explains why Kakashi could attack the physical portions of his body that resided in the Kami dimension while he was phasing through Naruto's punch in the real world. So when Madara said that it seemed as if Obito phased through them, this is what he was referring to, which then implies that Obito actually, unknowingly, first awakened his Mangekyo during what he thought was his last moments, not when he saw Rin die. That was just a reawakening. Now, I know that one of the main arguments against this would be that if he awakened the Mangekyo ability to phase through objects in that moment, why was he damaged? Well, the answer to this is actually very simple. You see, to understand what Madara meant when he said that it was almost as if he passed right through them, you have to understand the full context of what happened. See, there's this big misconception that Obito was just crushed by a single rock and that did him in, right? When the truth is that the entire structure caved in, which under any normal circumstance would have crushed his entire body. So if a single rock, just one rock by the way, falling on him, crushed his right side to the point that he couldn't feel it anymore, how did he survive the weight of multiple boulders falling on him later on? Well, it all goes back to Madara's hypothesis, which is that it's almost as if he phased right through them, which for one serves to foreshadow his future Mangekyo ability and also to explain how he survived. Oh, by the way, Kami is stated to be autonomous, so Obito doesn't have to manually activate it, which means that he doesn't need to be aware of it in order to use it. So the logic does track, and it's the main reason why the statement exists in the first place. By the way, Sarada herself also underwent this process with her normal Sharingan. This was confirmed by Sakura, who said that she actually unknowingly awakened her Sharingan at a very young age, perhaps due to Sasuke's absence, which again goes back to my black hole theory, which is tied to the absence of Sasuke, but you know, that's besides the point. But yeah, this simply proves that when she awakened it on her way to meet Sasuke years later, that was actually a reawakening. This also happened to her father Sasuke as well, because it was initially believed that he awakened it during his fight with Haku back in part 1. Mainly because the story made it seem that way through the dialogue and the visuals, but he actually awakened it the same night Itachi killed his parents and subconsciously suppressed it, likely due to the, let's say, traumatic experience. So it could also be the case that Sarada subconsciously suppressed this power because of the event it was tied to. Now there is some contradictory dialogue to this theory because Yodo does imply that Sarada suppressed it because she wanted to save it for protecting Boruto, which might lead back to the entire thing of, you know, going blind because he overused Mangekyo. And to be honest, Sarada is half Uchiha, so if she does go on to use it, she might go blind pretty quickly, if we're being honest. So I guess that's why she hasn't used it. But I mean, you know, Yodo shouldn't have needed to say this because, you know, well, if she does die in this fight, then she can't really protect Boruto either way, so, you know, it is what it is. With that said, that is it for the video, guys. So if you guys liked it, drop a like down below and also consider becoming a member to, you know, support the channel. Or you guys can join me on Patreon, which might be a tad bit better. But yeah, if you guys are new, remember to subscribe because only 30% of you guys are subscribed to the channel. You know, what are you guys waiting for? You're watching but not subscribing. That's crazy. But yeah, it's been great. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.